and welcome. Today, we're going to be looking into the energy, the legends, and spirituality that are involved with objects and our belongings. And we're here with Yasuka.
Hi.
Thank you for being with us. And so she has created a whole collection of jewelry and clothes that are inspired by Japan. And we're going to look into how she uses spirituality in her business. And it's called Midnight Blossom. So, what I really love about your collection is that you've given every piece a story, and each piece is inspired by a Japanese legend or is part of your culture. And I feel like this gives it more meaning, power, and beauty somehow. So, my first question is I've read a lot about different people like Marie Kondo who talk about, objects and belongings being alive. And do you feel like, objects are in some way alive or have some kind of energy connected to them? And if yes, does that make you treat them differently? And in what way?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me today for an interview. And yes, absolutely. I think objects can be alive, maybe not in the same way we are, you and I, but it's true that, I'd say they're more like a recipient, something that maybe sometimes can be empty, but also that can also inhabit a spirit or a soul. I think that's more the term soul. And it's true that it's, even though I remember when I was a bit younger, and when I sometimes actually even now when I treat objects as living being, when and sometimes talk to them, people used to, or even some of them even today find me a bit crazy. But right, I'm very thankful to actually Marie Kondo that kind of democratized, I don't know if that's the right term in English, but made this kind of belief more popular, and it absolutely changed how you treat your objects, I guess. And I think, for example, to get more into the Marie Kondo thing, if you give an identity to your belongings, and if you are looking to make them feel better in some ways, in a way they give it back to you. For example, it's well, my workshop is just behind. Normally it's supposed to be more tidy. Unfortunately, today is not one of these days. But for example, when I just keep the mess for way too long, I kind of feel guilty towards my materials, my tools. And I think we all have this kind of, you know, episode. Like, for example, when you are working with machines or even tools, and when they are not working, you kind of start praying to them, like, go on, you can do it. It sometimes happens, for example, when I use the sewing machine for a bit long, I can kind of feel that it's been a bit tired. For example, when I have had many orders and I had to make it like work a lot for like 5 or 6 days, I can, which is actually, which is kind of funny because it's mechanical, so it's not as if it's going to get tired, but you don't know why, it's you have all the threads tangling out of a sudden. And I also feel that, for example, I'm trying to take as much as possible the pictures myself, and I have also this approach with my camera. And for example, I put a lot of new collections on my site recently, and I made it work like for 4 days in a row. And the fourth day, I was like, I'm truly sorry for what I'm doing to you right now, And before tidying up, because I won't need it for like 2 or 3 weeks for now. So before putting it back in its box, I was like, well, now you can rest. And before I torture you again, kind of,
Oh, poor things.
yeah.
um,
So yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I feel like you have so much love for them, and through this love, as I was talking about, these legends, I was very curious about how did this passion for Japanese legends and philosophies started. The ones that you give to your pieces.
I think there are many reasons to that. For example, I think there's the fact of giving a name is something very, very powerful. That's actually the first step to build an identity is a name. And by doing that, in a way, for example, for my collections or the pieces I do, they become more like not only like a designer item you have in your closet or your jewelry box. But since I'm trying to do, for example, for the jewelry, I'm trying to do pieces that you can wear every day, that you don't have to take it off while having a shower or going to the beach or swimming pool, because that might, or even when you put perfume, because this is known to be very aggressive to jewelry. But with my collections, there are no worries at all. So it's also, in a way, to build like a partnership between the thing you wear every day and yourself. And I think the first step to it is to put a name. And for example, I just spoke about my camera, my sewing machine, or also my overlocker. They also actually do have a name. So it's in that way, I feel like, I'm even with my tools or the things I make, I really built this kind of a partnership. So that was the first thing. And of course, when you're choosing a name, it cannot be like, how should I put it, random. Even though actually it's not really me choosing it. It's, how I choose the name. It's really the inspiration. When I finish a prototype, I'm basically thinking deeply, oh, what could be a little name? And they tell me actually. And suddenly I just have um, a legend or a person, a real person from Japanese history, like popping out in my head. And I'm like, okay, so that's your name. And I would just go study more deeply the person, and so I can have a final text that could go with it on, well, that's for the online shop, but also have something that I can explain to people. So when I'm doing my markets or that kind of thing. So the first thing I'd say, it's really inspiration. And that's the funny thing, is I don't feel like I'm choosing their name. It's more like them telling me theirs. So yeah, in a way, they are completely alive.
When did you get interested? Was it, already when you were a child, or did it come later on, this interest for these spiritual legends and philosophies?
Well, since I was very young, it's well, first of all, I'm half Japanese, so my mother and my Japanese family, when we visited them, would really make me go through like rituals, which were very common for us, and also a thing that I always found funny in Japanese philosophy is actually how there's always a gratitude, you know, towards deities that cannot be seen with the naked eye. For example, when I had the first time, I'm working mainly with kimonos, and the first time I've worn one was when I was 3, and it was for the Shigo-san, which is a tradition in Japan. It's I just forgot in which season it was, but basically you bring your children who are 3, 5, and 7 years old to the temple to thank the gods that they went through one scale. It's because, well, before, unfortunately, children's death were way higher. So when they, for example, they reach I don't know how you call it in English, milestones. So you will basically express your gratitude towards deities that your children were allowed to go through a certain milestone. So there were loads of rituals when I was a child who involved many things that cannot be seen with our eyes. That I was always conscious of some of these things that I wouldn't say not part of our world, but not material like the way we are, you and I. That so since I was a child, it was completely part of my life to live with these beings that and cannot be seen or heard with a biological body, should I say? And also, for the historical figures, for example, of course, Japanese historic figures are also involved in these kind of traditions and ritual. And of course, many of them we don't have many precisions, or I haven't studied yet. For example, I have one of my bestsellers, the Tomoe jeans jacket. She's from the 11th or 12th century. So she's known as a female warrior who was very, very powerful. But it's true that for now, I haven't studied yet if she did, what was her spirituality, or how these kind of beliefs involved her in the way she would fight or anything. But of course, they weren't part of the culture, and all these traditions are like very, very old. So obviously she was involved in there. So the way that all these historic figures built themselves also around the spirituality was something I thought very interesting. And the way I wanted to make Japan involved, and it's kind of linked with the historical figures, but many people who went to Japan and visited temples, it could be Buddhist temples, Shinto temples, it and also getting involved more and more around the spirituality. And I heard a lot that, some people came back from a trip to Japan saying they feel like they became a better person, a better version of themselves, and to be more sensitive and more grateful about these things that maybe not involve only human beings. And that's something I found it very interesting. And of course, I'm not a travel agency in a way, so of course, I cannot. But I think there are also ways to make people travel to Japan through items involving that kind of spirituality, which is about living, giving a soul and a name to an object.
I absolutely agree. And yeah, you were talking about the kimonos, and those you actually have them brought from Japan. And not only are they absolutely beautiful, you transform them into beautiful pieces, but they have been worn before. But that's okay. I mean, you cleansed them and you do this whole ritual to cleanse them from the energies of the previous people who have worn them. And what could you explain what kind of rituals you do to cleanse these kimonos?
Well, it's very, very simple. It's just I've seen my mother doing it since I was a child. Every time she would get something secondhand, or I remember a very, very um, I'd say something that really, I'd say almost shocked me. It's sorry about that. It's, for example, my father once he came back home. Sometimes my father would find things off the streets and bring it home. And once he found a wedding ring off the streets actually, and he thought that my mother or I, since it's a jewelry and women love jewelry, and he thought we would be so happy about it. And I just remember my mother panicked when she saw the wedding ring, because obviously a lost wedding ring in the street cannot be something good. It's the best scenario is someone lost it and is panicking, or the other scenario is that there's been like quite a story behind it, and some woman somewhere just took it off and threw it out the street. So the reason why a wedding ring is just basically off the street randomly, there cannot be any good reason to it actually. So my mom kind of panicked, and her first thing was, it's still, it's a wedding ring, so it's precious metal, so the first thing we should do, to be honest people, is to bring it back to the lost and found objects. But that was in the evening and it was closed already, so I remember she put the ring next to a little mountain of salt to kind of use it as a barrier against any negative feelings that could be around it. So salt was basically the cleansing ritual that was in my life since I was a child, and I saw my mother doing it quite a lot. And also, even the salt, when you're done with it, I always put it down the sink, or because I heard some people, they just throw it in the dustbin, and that's not the good thing. It's salt comes from which is funny because I use salt from the mount from the Alp mountains, but normally salt comes from the sea, so you should give it back to the sea. So that's why I just put it down the drain, because at some point, it will go back to water, and we'll end up in the ocean again. So that's basically the thing. I take the salt and I put it around something which is secondhand or might have negative energies, and then I put it down just the sink actually. She always told me never, because if we follow the logic, because I use salt from the Alps, logically you should give it back to the Alps. But my mother always told me that I shouldn't put it in on earth, or because that when you have salt on soil, rice doesn't grow anymore. So she always told me somewhere down the drain or down a river, something linked with water. That's what she told me. And yeah, so as you said, I get all my kimonos from Japan. And there's one thing that, which is not negotiable in my business, is that all the kimonos I get and I work are all kimonos I found myself in Japan. For example, I'm in a very, very delicate situation because, of course, with all the borders which are closed because of the coronavirus, I'm not really able to go. And it is negotiable, but I will have to get 2 weeks quarantine, which is, in 2 weeks, it's humongous when you are an independent worker. So that's not a risk I'm willing to take. And but on the other hand, I also have all my materials almost out of stock. But that's still something I rather, and of course, there's something miraculous today, which is internet. But still, I don't want to order my kimonos off the internet because I think it's for me, every kimono is is an encounter, and it's I don't feel like meeting them online. That's I'd say, I think it's almost like a relationship. Some people, even though I'm it's I've been happy for 6 years, and I'm a couple from Tinder, and I didn't mind meeting my partner on a dating application. I'm not feeling like doing that with my kimonos. I could have my suppliers can we can do a Zoom meeting with my suppliers, but it's also seeing them, and also just and also that's more technical, but I also have to verify the state of it to see if they are workable, because depending of the age, because silk is a very, very delicate material. If it has been worn too much, it might not survive. At décousure. Well, when I unstitch them, because I get the fabric back and give them a second life. And for example, my grandmother's wedding kimono that my mother forbid me to do anything with it. But it's that one, unfortunately, it's almost 60 years old. No, 60, 70 years old. And unfortunately, even if I get the permission from my mother to do something with it, I don't think it will survive an unstitching, unfortunately. So that's also something I have to double check just in case, if I can do something with it. And I don't know, were there other questions actually? Sorry.
Um, no, I was really wanting to know about the rituals that you do and how you learned them, but I think you pretty much answered that.
Mm.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you go to Japan and you go to the places where you see the kimonos, um, do you feel something depending on, like, when you touch them, the different pieces? Is there like some kind of connection you feel, or some kind of like inspiration that comes when you see one more than another? I'm very curious about this energy perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, it's well, it's basically, oh, that's cute, and I just get it. But sometimes there were really beautiful encounters, and one of them recently is for example, maybe you've seen it on my Instagram, but I made a wedding dress to one of my it's a cosmetic designer friend, Forêt Bleu, and 3 years ago we had a collaboration box together with one of my jewelry and one of her creams, and we wanted to shoot a video with a kimono actually. And she asked me if I can get a white one in Japan. And what, a white kimono is not that hard actually. I could get, for example, because in kimonos you have the juban, which goes under the kimono, which is basically the underwear, and they're basically all white, all cream colors. So I actually had met so many choices, but I just couldn't find it. It's I was going through all the white kimonos possible, and I just couldn't find the one for her. And when I was walking around Asakusa, and it wasn't even one of my suppliers, it's I basically found a kimono shop, secondhand kimono shop, and there was this cardboard box on which it was written sales. And normally I don't really check in there, because if they're really like put in this cardboard, and I felt very, very bad for these kimonos, because I love all kimonos in the world. But of course, these are not the manageable ones, should I say? It's because, of course, if they are in that sale box, it means they have like huge defaults, or they are not in a good state anymore. But I still felt very, very attracted to that box. I just had to double check in there. And in the bottom of it, and of course, it's on the other thing, they're not even folded properly, they're all messed up in there. And I just found, like this little bubble, of a kimono. who was completely tangled, and I just took it out, and I was quite amazed because it's true that it didn't have the uh, doublure. I forgot how you say it. It's uh,
Yeah, when it's folded.
doublure. Yeah, it means it was a one lining basically, because normally they have also inner fabric. So it's true that it had legs fabric, but it didn't have much stain. It was still silk, because sometimes in the sale box you also find very good state polyester ones. And I don't know, I just saw it and I was like, and I have this ritual with my kimonos is I always tell them in Japanese, "Oyomi ni kuru," which means, would you come in wedding towards my home? It's a way. It's not precisely marry me, because the wedding ritual in Japan, for example, it's not like our European mentality, where women will wear white dresses to show purity, but in Japan they wear white if in wedding when they have a wedding, because the woman becomes white. It's they just take off their old colors to be dyed in the colors of the new family she's joining in. So that's the ritual of wedding. And some people think it's a bit sexist, but actually the other way is possible as well. Men can also, for example, my grandfather was in that case. My grandfather had to give up his surname for my grandmother. So the other way happens. Even though the white kimono is more like a feminine thing, and that's the symbolism around the white in weddings. So you basically accept to give up your story, your history, to join mine. But that's not what I'm also forcing, because of course this kimono was made but by another craftsman, and that kind of thing. It doesn't mean you have to forget everything. It means that are you accepting that the continuation of your story is with me? So it's that way of saying, will you marry me? And I always tell that to my kimono. I whisper it before I look crazy in the shops, but that's what I always say, and what I always say. And when I send all my parcels at the post office, I would just whisper a little "thank you for marrying me" and send them off.
Oh, that's
And so yeah,
so
anyway, so
sweet. I
it
really like
is.
that story.
It is. Yeah. So with the Forrest Blue's wedding dress, it's because at this stage it wasn't a wedding dress at all. It was a kimono I found in a cardboard. But it's just that cardboard, the way called me, and of course, so I got it, and I told her as well, "Will you marry me?" And this one, it's she came back with me and in my suit in my suitcase. And so we did the shooting with it. It was she looked the kimono looked lovely in the on another model. It wasn't herself, it was a model. It was discreetly looking like a kimono. And and of course, before that, when my friend saw it, she was like amazed. And of plus it was beige. It's she asked me for a white one, and I was like, I'm sorry, it's a beige one, but I'm sure it's the good one. And I was completely right. She was, you know she was out of breath when she saw it, and I gave it to her as a present. But the problem is that kimono, because of the way you're supposed to put them, because normally you fold them around the waist, they are very, very long garments, and they just go on the ground. So she wanted to wear it as a trench in a way, but of course it was way too long to do it. So poor little thing, it got in the closet for 2 years again. So and during once when I visited her for a tea time, she got it out of the closet, and she was like, I feel bad for her because I'm not wearing her, so is it possible to make it short so I can wear it as a trench? And I was like, of course I can. And that happened like around February. And in March, and sorry, yeah, it was in March, I think. It's her boyfriend asked her hand, and she decided. And during that, I procrastinated and I haven't worked on the kimono at all. It was in my workshop, it's just around. I'm actually realizing how much I put this kimono through. It's and so yeah, she was basically hanging in my workshop. And when she told me that, she just said she will have a small wedding at the town hall, with just her and the husband. And how do you call them in English? Témoin.
Uh oh, just a second.
Not our usual word in English. I think it's
It's usually your maid of honor and your best man who are there.
yeah.
yeah, witnesses. It's your witnesses.
Witnesses, yeah, witnesses, yeah, yeah. Well, actually, same word. It's yeah. So just the two of them and the witnesses. And she was like, yeah, I'm just maybe. Honestly, I wouldn't mind just a simple dress. I can wear it also during summer. And so she wasn't really keen on finding like the amazing wedding dress. And she wanted something like more simple. And we had the idea. I was like, why since I finished a prototype of a summer dress, I told her, would you like me to upcycle it for a wedding dress? And she was like, oh my God, and she came here to try it on, and so she can try my prototype just to see or if the cut that goes well on her and stuff. And we validated everything, and so yeah, she got married with that kimono. And I think, when I was sewing that piece, I was like, I think, we didn't know nothing. She knew what she was coming for, So yeah, no way. But it's also the way, I never checked those card boxes, but this one, to me, it's that piece. So in a way, I think that kimono, I always say she for kimono. I think, yeah, she called me. Like, she was like, I'm supposed to get my wedding in Switzerland, so you better get me, so you better take me to Switzerland. I think that's what she was telling me.
Yeah. uh, for the kimonos, I feel like it's the way you used them. It's very linked to the concept of kintsugi in a way,
Yeah.
and it's a philosophy that I really love. That's behind it, and I was wondering if you could explain, briefly what it is and how it touches, your collection, and especially the kimonos.
It's true. Wasn't it kintsugi? No,
Yeah,
gi?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry if I don't
kintsugi.
pronounce it
Yeah,
right. Kintsugi. Yeah. If you
kintsugi.
could, yeah. And for those who don't know what it is, yeah, just say what, explain.
Yeah. So basically, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's basically one a ceramic. And normally you do it more often with tea ceramic ceramics. When they are broken, from what is there a cat behind?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. I love cats. uh, that is stripy. Sorry. So basically when it's broken, they put lacquer
Yeah.
in between, and they put like a gold finish on top of it, and it's a new type. It's a new beauty from broken from being broken. So the that's how it's made. And it's very
Yeah.
funny you asked me that. Yeah.
Oh, what I love about it is the fact that, it makes it even more beautiful once it has its scars. I find
Yeah,
that concept for life in general just wonderful and kind of healing for everyone.
it is. And also, I think there's a huge philosophy behind it. Like, you should accept your scars as well, and what made you. And it's very funny you asked me that because, I'm giving a hand to this concept store, Japanese concept store, which is run by a childhood friend who's also half Japanese like me. And the main item are ceramics. I had a customer actually 2 weeks ago coming in asking if we might have some pieces of kintsugi. And I was like, nope. And they are very, very rare items. We have to admit, it's not something which is commonly done. Actually, this customer told me that there is someone in Germany doing it. He wanted to buy a piece, but this craftsman basically refused to sell the pieces. You're supposed to bring your own ceramic to make it repaired. And the customer said like, it's he almost has hesitated to break one pieces on purpose to bring it there. But that goes against the whole concept. An accident is an accident, and breaking a ceramic is just being mean to it. So and basically it's abuse towards an object. But I think I really like the philosophy behind it because it kind of gives them a second chance in life. And maybe the way I associate that with my kimono is that because I mentioned all the wedding rituals I have with my kimonos, and it's a, there's a huge taboo in Japan, which is divorce. Even though from the last statistics I've seen, from 30 to 40% of married couples, will go through a divorce. So the rate is going higher than before, and it's still, there's still a stigma around it. Before working as a designer, I used to work also 12 years as a tour guide in Geneva. So my customers, so I was mainly, presenting, introducing Japanese tourists to Geneva. So, and it was very, very funny because I've never lived in Japan. So, but even though, I had this opportunity to learn a lot about it, because Japanese people tend to be very, very reserved and not talk a lot about their problems. But, while they are traveling, they don't really care how they are judged, and there are a few taboos that go away. And I had the opportunity to share loads of experience with these, like, very personal experience. There are many things which are taboo. For example, there's another thing which is very taboo, which are disease. And I remember I had like people talking to me about how they fought, for example, cancer. And after they just told me what they went through, they will finish their story with, "It's been a long time I haven't spoken about my cancer," because it's so taboo in Japan to speak about your weakness. And I'd say the other thing that came out a lot, similar to this, was divorced people. It's and especially women. And I had some ladies, they were like, they were having their divorce trip, like, I finished my divorce, now I'm just going to change, get some fresh air, so I'm just going to travel around. So I had many ladies like that. And I had men as well. Like, I finished my divorce and now I'm just treating myself to a trip. So I had both of them. And and as I said, divorce is something very taboo in Japan, and we even say batsuichi, which means, or batsuni. So we consider divorce as a cross, basically, something very unsuccessful, and a failure, basically. And I heard many ladies in my customers saying, "I'm a batsuichi anyway, so no one would want me," which was like very it was very sad to hear that, and I think in a way my kimonos are in a way, but when you are a second-hand object, you are in a way a batsuichi, because you wedded a family or a person, you belong to someone, and you ended up in a second-hand shop or a vintage shop because there was a divorce between that person and the object itself. So in a way, it's a batsuichi. And also, because Japanese people have this sensitivity about negative energy that could be in the object itself, they are not very keen on secondhand objects. They prefer new in a way, because they just don't know if a kimono. I'm sorry, I'm looking this way because I put all my kimonos out for a customer before and I couldn't tidy yet. And you want to see them?
Sure.
Yeah. So it was for a jeans custom, and she chose her fabric around here. I don't know if you see it well.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, so that's why I'm sorry, I'm looking this here a lot. Yeah, so basically, yeah, they are like divorcees, and because maybe some spirits are inside them, some Japanese are not really like the most fond of secondhand objects. So that's why, in a way, I associate my kimono with batsuichi women who feel like, they won't, sometimes they kind of lost confidence and feel like maybe no one's going to love them again. And if possible, I wish I could get them all in Switzerland. But of course, it's remake is also something which is done in Japan as well. So I'm not the only consumer of secondhand kimono, but it's true that to be, the beautiful furisode are the long sleeves one for because in January in Japan we have the coming of age ceremony, and maybe they're not going to become the kimono for that kind of ceremony or for a wedding again, but you know, it kind of gives me an opportunity to be beautiful again in another way. And so in a way, in that way, maybe it's what I do is very similar to kintsugi.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way because a friend of mine who's Japanese told me that kimonos, they're being or like thrown away a lot in Japan, or people are just putting them in their closets and forgetting completely about them. It's really
True. Yeah.
losing a lot. It's not, they're not being worn anymore a lot of times, and compared to before, she was saying. And what I find interesting is when you take the kimonos and transform them into modern pieces
Yeah.
that people can wear every day. I feel like it gives them a new beauty, a new purpose, and yeah, it's just and everyone can wear them all the time. It just with just a part of that kimono, it just brightens up a whole piece with it.
It is. Basically, for me, my duty is to make my kimonos, my little ladies here, feel like actually it wasn't that bad. I ended up in a secondhand shop. That's basically how I want them to feel.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes, it's even to get back to the example of woman who divorced. In a way, of course, there's a stigma around it, and there are certain kind of reputation. But if they get the chance to remarry someone and be happy, they're like, actually, that divorce wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Well, besides, the objects, having energy linked to them, there's also, I believe, an energetic importance to where you place the object in your home. And so, in your case, I mean, do you have like special objects that you have placed in a particular area just for, energetic reasons?
Yeah. There's actually one. It's maybe this one's not gonna be easy with the computer, so maybe I can, if you want to see it, I can just go get it.
Okay.
This one,
So what is this?
it's a shobai hanjo. So it's a benediction plate. You stay here for a second. It's a benediction plate. It's well, basically it's a business blessing. It's this is uh you have other one. For example, there's one. It's not called shobai hanjo on the other hand, but this is like a blessing plate from Shinto temples. And you can also get this one. I think this one was from a Shinto. I think it was Kandamyoji. I'm really bad at reading temple names, so but I think it was Kandamyoji in Tokyo, and you can also get it from Buddhist temples. And so we have these blessing plates that you can decorate at your home. For example, my mother has one. She has two. She's working as a Japanese teacher, so she's also a independent worker. So she has one as well, but she also have another one for the family blessing. These are honestly, if you are Japanese and you have a business, and maybe if you go to Japanese restaurants or Japanese linked business, you might find one around the corner. And I think that's really like the step one. It's not even about business plan or anything. It's about getting your business blessing plate. And so I got. Normally, I'm supposed to take it back to Japan because normally we say they have a peremption date. Normally, it's 1 year. Even like omamori, I have to admit, Japanese temples are very, very good marketing people. It's like it's only valid 1 year and come and get a new one. I should do that with my kimonos sometime. I'm just joking, but it's so yeah, basically you have omamori or like the amulets or blessing plates. Normally you're supposed to take them back in a year. For example, that's what you do around New Year. You just give back all the old ones and you get the new ones. So I'm supposed to get this one back to Japan because I got it in February 2019. So it's been working a bit. It's been a year and a half, almost more than a year for him. So it might have to work a year and a half before I get it back to Japan. So it's something I think that's really like the first step. You just get this, you decorate it, so you get the blessing for your business. Um,
And
yeah,
where did you place it? And
yeah,
for,
that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
and why did you place it there?
I just realized I was deviating. Sorry about that.
Oh,
So
no.
it's a bit complicated to explain, but that's my workshop. So I have my desk facing one wall, and my, how do you call it? Not cupboard, my wardrobe. I don't know. It's my shelf.
Mhm.
Actually, these were opposed when I moved in here. I moved in here in March 2019. My show by 100 basically was facing the mirror. Oh, no, sorry, not the mirror, the window. And it was okay. It just, I didn't feel like anything was off. And I just wanted to a bit of change. And so I reversed the desk and the shelves. And suddenly my benediction plate, which was always on top of the shelf, was, well, basically, if you can see where the cardboard is on top of my shelf, it was there, and I felt like something was not what really felt like something was off. Something that I don't know how to really put it. While I was working on my desk, I really felt uncomfortable. That's the term, uncomfortable. Like a bad feeling. And I realized actually that my benediction plate was appearing in the mirror in the bathroom. So there could be two theories. It's maybe don't make it something important, face something like a bathroom. That's maybe the first thing. Um, but I really felt like more like it was the mirror actually. So I talked about it with my mother, and she double checked if it's advised, if it's unadvised to put these amulets or benediction plates in front of a mirror. And it's just easy Google it. It's because there are many monks and many people who are into these things having blogs as well. And actually, we have found many articles saying that actually that was a very, very bad idea. So so that's why I put it on another shelf where it's not mirror, it's not facing a mirror or anything. But my mother was quite amazed that it's I just understood that something was wrong just by feeling it. I just went when I visited her, I was like, Mom, I just put my show by 100 there, and I feel like it's wrong, and I'm wondering if it's the mirror. And
No,
she was like, well,
I
you know,
understand definitely that, that feeling when something doesn't, yeah, it doesn't feel right inside. And it's also like, when you're going through a really tough time and all of a sudden you just feel this urge to completely rechange everything in your office or
yeah,
your room,
yeah,
you just, it's like the energy there is not helping to go into the right direction, and
completely.
yeah.
For example, the other thing, it's that I wondered a lot where I should put them. For example, my uncle offered my boyfriend and I a few katanas, and of course, and I really love weapons. So and especially traditional weapons. It's even as a Swiss person, I have a thing for the albarde. I think they're amazing, really. Um, but also, of course, the point of a weapon is to kill people, in a way as well. So that's also the kind of object that, you have many opinions about it. And I was wondering, for example, when I got them, I was like very happy to have them, but I was like, where should I put them? And I felt like, the entrance was okay, but in a way, it's if you have good energy coming in and you have a weapon just in front of it, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And basically, I tried many places around home, and actually, I saw many theory about it. I think it's like the mirror at the entrance. Some people say it's bad, some people say it's good, and I saw so many theories about weapons at the entrance as well. In a way, it can protect you from bad energy, but also it can scare the good ones. And I put it there, and I felt like it was right actually. And that I think is the important thing is that when you put something around, you basically feel if it's uncomfortable or not. I think that's the most important part, really.
Talking about weapons and blades, it reminds me there's one of your pieces that I really find very interesting. It's the pair of earrings with the stone, that's kind of in the shape of a blade that you call tsurugi, I think.
Tsurugi.
Yeah.
Yeah, tsurugi.
And
Yeah, it means yeah, and
for
it
this,
means blade. Yeah.
oh, okay. I didn't even know. And I was wondering if you could tell the story of this piece and what lesson you learned through it.
I think actually it was a very, very complicated piece because I think, well, first of all, as I mentioned before, I'm quite a huge fan of weapons. Is weapon can be plural? Well, weapon anyway. It's my English is weird sometimes. Well, my uncle from Japan, as the one who offered me the katanas, is a weapon. It's collector. Sometimes I wonder how my brother, and especially my cousins who were there all year, survived in that house. I remember we were watching our Dragon Ball Z or Sailor Moon. When we visited them in Japan, and there were two naginatas, the spares, spears, two spears, real one next to the TV. Basically, I just remember. I don't remember what kind of episode I saw in Japan, but I just remember the two spears next to the TV, and there were so many katanas and bows and hours around that house. My uncle is basically a huge fan of weapons, so I think I got a huge influence from that. And of course, when you start liking weapons, of course you go to the ones who use them, which are obviously samurais. And of course, Bushido is a very, very interesting philosophy, and also even simply, even if you just read it as a literature piece, it's very interesting. But now currently I'm reading the Gorin no Sho, the Treaty of Five Rings from Miyamoto Musashi, for example. Very, of course, they're classic, but they go to classic literature, so they're not the easiest book. But I always find it interesting. And to go back to the Tsurugi collection, it wasn't easy. And also, the other thing that made it hard is I feel like a year before, and I think one good thing with the coronavirus is that many people, having some free time or, you know, and able to study new things. I just remember like 1 or 2 years ago, everyone thought samurais were, very honorable person. It's well, of course they have the sense of honor and very, very romanticized. And I feel like they realized recently that, it's still a warlord. It's I'd say it's like you in the European culture, it's like chivalry. It has been romanticized a lot, with being noble, with honor. But the main purpose of a knight or a warrior is to participate in war and kill people. But on the other hand, what I found very interesting with the samurai is the Edo period in Japan was a very, very peaceful time. And suddenly it became a philosophy about becoming a warrior in a time of peace. And that I think, and they made like poetry, arts very important in the education of a warrior. And I think that's the interesting time. It's honestly in the 17th century. It was, of course, there was a code of honor, loyalty, but that was also so you don't betray your master. But there was a lot of betrayal at this time as well. It's just war times. And as I said, even if we have this huge image of the honorable warrior, especially during the not 17th, 16th, because it's in the 1500, especially during Sengoku Jidai, it was a bloodbath. Japan was basically a bloodbath. It was a lot of killing around. So what I mean is that when I always had the idea to make a collection based on weapons and based on this image of the honorable warrior. And suddenly, I don't know why there's been a huge promotion about actually how they were really honorable during the 16th century. And I was like, yeah, this is not really business helping, guys. But in a way, it's the truth, and I love history, and I'm also happy that people learn about it. And that's what actually, I think that's a funny thing. It's as I said, they were very, very. How should I put it? I don't even know the word in French, but it's impitoyable.
Oh, uh, I can't remember
It's
the word. Um, Just a second, let me research Google. Ruthless. That's it.
Thank you, Ruthless. Of course, it's and I think what's very interesting, it's basically you had these ruthless warriors in a wartime, where basically we have to say, it was about how many battles you've won, and winning a battle, of course, goes with casualties. And suddenly, 1600, wow, it's peaceful times. What do we do now? And I think that's the very interesting part. So, and I really like the philosophy of the history of samurai in that way, because I think when we're younger and less mature, we tend to answer with violence or strength directly towards problem. When we mature, suddenly, it's how to be a peaceful one, and how do we avoid shedding blood around by not choosing the weapon, the way of the weapon. And that, I think, it's in a whole, it's very interesting. It's, I think, like the history of samurai is also about an individual maturing in a way. I remember, for example, you see the children playing around in the parks. They get the wooden sticks, and it's about being the strongest one. And then you learn, being an adult, that being the strongest or being the most honorable one is not about being the strongest, having the strongest weapon. That's not the thing. And also, it's that's more of a personal story. But I mentioned before, I used to work as a tour guide, and once I had this client who was, I think it was eighth dan karate master, and I used to do karate as well when I was a teenager. So I was, because of course, there's also this whole martial arts part as well. And so I was completely into martial arts. And he told me something that really moved me a lot, which was the karate you don't use is the strongest one. And it was really, and actually, Tsurugi collection is almost dedicace, a shout out to him. It's because he, of course, there wasn't only he was a master, and we spent 3 days together. So obviously we had the time to talk a lot about a lot of things, and he completely changed my life in a way. So that, and also there are a few other symbols around the collection. For example, there is the hamaya, which is the arrow you use in when you go visit the temple on New Year, on New not Eve, on the first day of the year normally, you get an arrow called hamaya, and this is called a devil repelling arrow, and basically you put it normally near the entrance, and it's always, the arrow is always facing down, and which I again find it interesting. It's again a weapon which is not used as for the main purpose of a weapon, as because I repeat myself, the main purpose of a weapon in medieval times was basically to take people lives, and suddenly it became more like symbols, and actually how the way you don't use weapons, it becomes such a beautiful thing, and there was a whole philosophy. And I have to admit, the text accompanying Tsurugi was one of the hardest to write. It's
Yeah, but I found it quite interesting. That's why I was, yeah, curious
yeah.
about that story. Yeah. Um,
Um, and also in that text, I mentioned Kusanagi no Tsurugi, which is one of the three sacred treasure of Japan. And the very interesting thing is, from what I've studied until now, that blade never killed anybody. You know, I think it was, I'm not really sure about that, but I think it was Yamato Takeru who used it first to make something linked with wind and grass fields. So that's the part I'm not really sure about it. But then one thing which is, I'm sure that this part I'm sure is, when Susanoo, the god of ocean, kills Yamata no Orochi. So this is all in Shintoism, which is the multi-head snake. He finds that blade in one of the snake heads, and he offers it to his sister Amaterasu, because they went through a huge fight together, and there's just the symbolic of using a blade to make peace again. So in a way, the way how weapons also, it's was linked also into peaceful actions since, because Shinto is of course obviously one of the oldest books of Japan, like more than millennium ago. So I think it was the 600s, 700 Shinto Kojiki. But from that time already, there's already a weapon used to sign, in a way, a new chapter of peace between two gods. And I think that symbolism is very interesting. And it was very, very difficult to really put the accents into that philosophy. So, but I also, in a way, allow myself to change the text if I feel like it. Not changing the sense of it, but if I just want to do that's of course being a designer. For example, there are many collections, you get new stones, new materials, and it will always have a similar vibe to it, but it might change a bit, And I think I'm completely allowed to do that with my text. And when I feel like I can explain better this philosophy in rhetoric text, and it's well, more like poetical, it's a very, very well written text. It's I'll just change it.
Well, talking about the stories, which one, which story or legend inspired you the most to create one of your pieces?
For me, it's the blouse. It's the Fumi blouse, because Fumi basically Fumi Ba. It's my great grandmother, and so I really love it's the story behind it is very lovely. It's because, well, as you can see on my on my about part on my site, it's my ancestors were kimono merchants, so it's not for nothing I'm working kimono today. So there's a story in family, there's a family story behind it. And so my great grandmother was born in this family merchant shop, well, house, well, kimono merchant family. Sorry, it's she was born in there, and of course she was helping the family business. And that shop had a partnership with a factory nearby. And so one day there was this delivery guy on his bicycle who came to deliver new pieces, new fabrics, so it can be put together as a kimono. And my great grandmother had like a love at first sight, first sight for him, and it was my great grandfather. So yeah, there was kimono delivery guy and kimono selling lady, and they just got together, and all their lives, they supported each other. So all the story behind it, and why I named the blouse after her is when I was living in London. That's another part of my life. It was a small 6 month chapter. I had actually a Japanese colleague in one of my jobs, and she always had those fancy shoes. It's that's something I remember a lot about her. She would have like very, very simple clothes, but she always had fancy shoes, and sometimes very expensive one, like designer shoes. And I asked her once, is like, it's I asked her once, why do you always have these magnificent shoes? And she told me, if you wear beautiful shoes, they will take you to beautiful places. And that was like basically her ritual, to always have beautiful shoes to be taken to beautiful places. And that's actually a philosophy that moved me a bit, and I still remember today. Since my great grandmother had this amazing destiny around the kimono, so, and of course she's been into this beautiful place with my great grandfather with the kimono, and since the blouse was basically my first kind of like apparel, garment that wraps all your body. So it's basically like, it's if you wear a fumi blouse, basically my grandmother will pull you somewhere, through the blouse to somewhere beautiful. It's so that's basically my favorite piece.
I definitely understand. I mean, it's definitely linked to a heartwarming and very special story, and it's really sweet.
Yeah,
I really like it.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, we're at the end of the questions, and I just want to thank you so much for answering them and for being here. Thank you.
Thanks to you too. Really, it was really like a lot of fun. It's
Yeah. And for those who are listening and watching this, thank you for being here too and for listening all the way. And I will be putting her link to her internet page, so you can go see her pieces, and also her Instagram page in the description box below. So you'll be able to check all that out afterwards. And yeah, have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye.